Hey, what's going on, everybody? We have an emergency update to the meta snapshot because there was a big B patch, and honestly, the old meta snapshot that we put out before wasn't really relevant anymore. So instead of doing it every Friday, I'm gonna just do it today because clock's ticking, we gotta climb. So couple surprises this patch so far. The best comp right now is actually Cho'Gath Reroll. It's really powerful. A lot of people are playing it. That's going to for sure be the S tier. Challenger, Sorcerer, Azir, all really solid. And then after that, we have a new comp, which is Gunner Reroll. That's going to be Jinx and Jace. Rogue Reroll, Vanquishers, Demacia, Shurima, Noxus Reroll, regular Gunners, Quinn Reroll, and then Karma, Bastion, Aphelios, and Silco. Naafiri Reroll in the B tier. And then C tier, it's got to be Bilgewater, you know? You can only bilge for so long, and now they are going to be in dog water instead. So let's move on into the comps. Let's go over Cho Bitem first because this is going to be your Cho'Gath Reroll, which is going to be probably one of the main comps so far. So there are two ways to play this comp. One is with Malzahar Reroll with Cho'Gath, the other's with Cassiopeia. You could play either or. Cassiopeia might be a little bit better. It depends on the situation. So if you're getting a lot of Cassiopeias, go for the Cassiopeia version. If you're getting a lot of Malzahars, go for the Malzahar version. They use the same items too. It's just like mana regeneration through blue buff and then AP. But then what you really want is 6 Bruiser. So if you ever get a +1 Bruiser, this comp is just ginormous big, right? Literally and figuratively. But if you can't do that, you need to rely on hitting Scion, which is a little tricky. So if you click into the comp, you'd want to add something like Sejuani plus the Scion later on. And after that, you are going to be good to go. 6 Bruiser Cho'Gath is going to be doing a lot of biting. After that, you could add in something like Silco if you need more damage, or if you don't get like a backline 3-star unit, or you could just add in legendaries, maybe like a Heimerdinger to kind of support your team. But this is just going to be a 1-cost reroll, which means that you do not want to level up early on and then roll to 30 gold at stage 3-1 at level 4. So you could get a lot of copies of Cho'Gath, Renekton, and Cassio or Malzahar. And then after that, hold Rek'Sai, hold Vi, level up, throw in 4 Bruiser, throw in 6 Bruiser later on, and that's going to be your team. Very easy to play. We don't need to go over this comp that much. You just want tank items on the Cho'Gath. So Redemption, I think, is the most important item. It's just like a giant healing item, and then just any generic tank item will do. But if you ever get Anima Visage, that is like a Giga Redemption. So yeah. After that, you want Bramble Vest and Dragonclaw, and then you're pretty much set. Like, you're going to have an unkillable tank, lots of health regen from both the Dragonclaw and the Redemption/Anima Visage, and then Bramble Vest just for like armor, because you also need armor in the game. After that, Renekton can use some of like the supportish tank items. So if you want to add some damage, Renekton can kind of hold that. And then in your backline, Cassio, Malzahar, or Silco, blue buff plus 2 AP items. Doesn't really matter which. Jeweled Gauntlet, Guardbreaker, Archangels, Rabadons, Gunblade, Giant Slayer, Shojin, does not matter. Just focus on the Cho'Gath items, get the other items after that, and then you're good to go. Let's move on into the next build. This is going to be Challengers. So Challengers, this is going to be a Fiora and Kai'Sa focus build. It's kind of like a duo carry. So what's going to happen is you're going to be focusing a lot on Kai'Sa items, Spear Shojin, or like a Rage Blade so that she gets to cast a lot. Spear Shojin is better in my opinion, and then 2 AP items after that. Fiora, BT, Titan's Resolve, and then you add on the Sterix Gauge from the Demacia, and then Fiora is going to be nice and golden. After that, you add in Jarvan as your main tank. You could add in some other dudes as your secondary tanks, but this team comp, that's pretty much all you really need from here. Just kind of like your standard 4-cost comp. They could kind of be played if you have a mix of like AD and AP items. So you put the AD Bruiser items on Fiora, AP items on Kai'Sa. So if you ever get like a mix of items, this is kind of one of the comps you could go for. Let's move on into the next comp, which is Sorcerers. So Sorcerers, this one's going to be the vertical build. This is the one with Silco, and Silco is just like the new 4-cost carry for Sorcerers, and he's pretty solid overall. Blue buff is like my favorite item on him. I would say it's required. It probably is, right? Because you just want him to throw his little juices out all over the board and then just throw 2 damage items on him. And then after that, you have tanks in Swain, Taric, or Jarvan. Any of them can hold the items. Bell causes a decent secondary carry, and then in the late game, you have Ahri. So it's mainly going to be a Silco show, and then Ahri 2-star in the late game to like get first place. But overall, very solid comp. Lots of different things you could do. Lots of things you could replace also. Like if you get Ahri, you could play Ionia. You could take out Caston, put in a Shen, then add in a Karma. You get Invokers and Ionia. Very strong. Lots of different things you could kind of mix and match. You could also go for 8 Sorcerer if you get +1 Sorcs. And you could also drop down a lot to like a lot of legendaries and then run like a 2 Sorcerer Silco build. That also works pretty decently. But standard leveling pattern for this, if you want to read more on like the how to play section, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta and you'll be able to see all the read-ups, and hopefully it helps you within your games if you need like more in-depth stuff. Let's move on into the next build, which is Azir Flex. So Azir Flex, a little bit harder to play because you could kind of play anything with Azir. Pretty much any comp is an Azir comp if you try hard enough, because you only need 2 Shurima or like 2 strategists to fit in Azir. And that's like a lot of builds. Like a lot of them kind of fit them in there for some strange reason. But Azir can also be really good if you have a Rage Blade early on and you're like, maybe I want to go like attack damage comps with like the Rage Blade. So I build the Rage Blade for attack speed, and then you're like, wait a minute, I have like all AP items after that. What do? You could throw them on Azir as like a backup carry and then kind of pivot into this comp because there's a lot of different things you could do with Azir. But the like general standard build, I hate saying standard build when it's like kind of a flex comp, is having the Juggernauts as the front line and then Azir in the back line. And then secondary carry could almost be anything. In this picture here, we have Silco. Silco is just good because you have Warwick already from Zon, and then he's also a Juggernaut. So if you get like Virulent Bioware, Silco's extremely good. I think that's by far his best like modification from Zon, but I guess other ones could kind of work on him. But so one really important thing about this is that you don't really need to focus on a vertical Shurima trait. You just play Azir, some Juggernauts, and then just any random units. So you could throw in like Heimerdingers, Legendaries, literally anything that buffs up your team, and then kind of forget about all the other units. You don't even need 4 Juggernaut. It's just one of the examples of how to play it. Next build up we have are the A tiers. So this one's going to be Gunner, Reroll, Jinx, and Jace. This comp's one of the new comps that we added this week. So Jinx Reroll is actually really powerful, and Jace actually does damage in the new set. That's one thing they kind of changed about him recently, and you only need one of them. But if you can, let's say you're in Scuttle Puddle where you get tons of items, tons of gold, you're able to afford everything. Both of them is like really strong, but you really only need one of them, and then they just shoot people. I mean, they're gunners, right? So to do this, you want to follow the leveling pattern that we're going to talk about here. So if you have Robotic Arm, you want Jinx. Jinx is so good with that augment because she just goes like shoot, and then yeah, everything's dead, right? If you don't have that augment, you could play Jace. And then if you want to play Jace, you want to reroll at level 7 in order to get Jace 3. But if you're focusing on Jinx, you want to roll at level 6 instead because she's a 2-cost unit. So it's a bit of a weird comp because the 2 carries that you're focused on, they're different costs. Oftentimes you could re-roll for Jinx 3 first and then get Jace later because oftentimes you get a lot of copies of Jace as you're rolling for Jinx. But typically you focus on one of them first and then get the second one later. Another important thing to do with this comp is you want to stabilize at around stage 3-2 at level 6. You want to find like Jinx 2 at that point, because if you just full econ the entire game, you're going to lose too much health and then lose one random fight for no reason, and then all of a sudden you're dead. So an important thing to do is stabilizing at stage 3-2 and then econing back up right afterwards, and then continuing your slow roll pattern as we talked about before. If you hit stuff really early, let's say you hit a Jinx 3-star really early or like a Jace 3-star really early but don't really hit anything else, you could power level up and then play 4-cost tanks instead of slow rolling for like Warwick 3 or like Vi 3. So that's another thing to kind of keep in mind whenever you play this comp. I'll try to play this comp on my stream later on, twitch.tv/BunnyMuffinsLOL. So hopefully if you want to tune in then, I'll try to play this when I can. Obviously for all reroll comps, you only want to go for them if you have a lot of copies of your desired reroll unit. Don't just like force it right away. I mean, you technically could, no one's stopping you, but it's just not recommended, you know? Like technically, okay, never mind. Let's move on into Rogue Reroll. So Rogue Reroll, probably one of the more fun comps right now. Kiana did get nerfed a little bit, but still pretty solid. You play her with Katarina. They're both like kind of like a duo carry comp. And same problem as the Jinx and Jace build where you have a 2-cost carry and a 3-cost carry. So it's kind of a little split in that sense, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the biggest deal ever. Focus on one of them, and then if you could get the other one, great. If not, you just have one carry that game. So in the games where you only have one carry, you kind of have to recognize when that happens, and then in those games, play a little more aggressively because you're probably not going to win the game, right? But if you do have a chance to get both of them 3-star, again, same thing, you still have to recognize that and then play more for like a 2nd place or a 1st place in those cases. So that's just one of the small things you could kind of do with comps like these, is you have to recognize what type of game you're in and then kind of adapt to that within that same game. So if you're high rolling, you have to play for a high roll. If you're low rolling, you have to play as if you're low rolling. You can't just play the same style every single time. A little difficult, I know. That's kind of part of like the struggle with TFT everyone makes these mistakes, right? Like we're all guilty of it, but it's just something we have to kind of keep in mind. But same leveling pattern as the one before, so we're not going to go through that this time. Let's move on into the next comp, which is Vanquishers. I think this is a pretty fun comp. I played it once, and not the best result, but it was like a pretty solid result. Xayah is decent, just not as powerful as she could be right now. I feel like they're gonna bring her up in the next patch for some reason. I just have this random like hunch. And then hopefully she can really shine in some sort of like vertical Ionia build, because Ionias I think are a really cool trait, but I just haven't seen much of Xayah yet. Like she's okay, she's decent, she's definitely in the A tier, definitely playable, but nothing super insane yet, because she's kind of getting outshined by Nyla, and then Nyla got super nerfed, and then because Nyla gets nerfed, it affects the other Vanquisher builds, which is the Xayah comp. So it's kind of like an unfortunate effect from the Bilgewater stuff in the first week, but hopefully she can come back into the meta. Shen's a great tank as per usual, and then you add in stuff like Juggernauts, because Darius is both a Vanquisher and a Juggernaut, and sets Ionia and Juggernaut, so it kind of makes sense to add them all in. And then in the backline, you have Jhin, Nyla, Xayah, and then some other Ionias just to round out your comp. Just so Xayah gets like a little bit more of a buff for her. Just so Xayah gets a little bit more of a buff from the Ionia trait. Next build up we have is Demacia. Demacia is going to be Fiora carry. Fiora carry is like really, really good. There's just not much else to say about that. You want to line her up with a secondary carry though. So Kai'Sa is going to be pretty good. After that, you could add in like a Mordekaiser if you have like a spatula for him, but he's kind of optional since we don't always get the spatula. But it is really important to have a secondary carry, because Fiora, as good as she is, she needs someone to like kind of whittle people down first. So Kai'Sa is actually like the perfect one for that. You could even put like a Morello on Kai'Sa, kind of get everyone low a bit, and then hopefully Fiora just does like a 1v4 at the end of the game, just because she's like full health and she's facing everyone who's half health. Also, very important thing. Make sure your carries only get 2 items so that they could get the Radiant item from Demacia, especially important on Fiora and Jarvan. And yeah, there's not really too much else to say apart from that. But pretty easy comp to play, because you just click all the gold units, because Demacia is just like all the golden people, and then you just play them and then hope for the best. It's a pretty solid build overall. Shurima is going to be the next build. So this one is just going to be as many Shurimas as you could fit on your board. Same thing as Demacia. Click on all the gold units, because Shurima is kind of like, they're the deserts theme, right? So they're kind of like goldish brown. And all you have to do is put attack speed items on Azir. Nashor's Tooth is great on him, but I still like the Rage Blade. I think Rage Blade's like my favorite item on him. I think it works a little bit better than Nashor's, but then the third item, it could be any damage item. It could even be a healing item such as Hextech Gunblade, because healing's always nice on random champions right now because they get hit by random AoEs. Getting a +1 Shurima is like a great bonus, but it's not required, but definitely does help out, because then you could potentially reach 9 Shurima, or you just reach 6 Shurima much easier, or you can drop Renekton later on. Next build up we have is Noxus Reroll. Noxus Reroll, I'm personally loving this comp. I've always liked Noxus for some reason, but they do have a new identity now. You no longer do Darius carry. Maybe in the future there is a spot for Darius, but right now he's kind of like a trait bot. It's kind of sad. A trait bot means you just use them for their traits, not for their like abilities or health pool or tankiness or damage. You just put them in because they're like, oh, this person has Juggernaut and Noxus, and we're running both of those right now. And that's really all the reason he's in right now. I do hope there is a Darius reroll build in the future. There probably is, but it just needs to be buffed up a little bit, I'm guessing. But Mordekaiser's an absolute monster. RFC is just the best item on Mordekaiser right now. Don't ask me why they made it that way, but they wanted more RFC holders in this set, and they're kind of making up for lost time, because in set 9 they had like no RFC item holders, and now they have a ton. So Mordekaiser is definitely one of them. He just does damage on every auto attack, like magic damage, so getting a melee unit into a range unit, definitely very helpful. You could reroll some stuff though. So I've seen some people, what they do is they go level 7 and roll all the way down to 0, and then they're looking for Mordekaiser too, right? But at the same time, if you get a lot of Dariuses or a lot of Katarinas, you could go for them 3-star and kind of have them be the secondary carry. For tank items, it's going to be Swain or like someone else. Sometimes you could use Nasus, because Nasus is both a Juggernaut and a Shurima, so he kind of fits in this build because you have Cassiopeia, you have the Darius to give him trades, and then he could kind of hold your tank items, or it could be Swain. Either or works. Next build up we have is the regular Gunner build. This one's going to be from a Piltover start. So Piltover, you only want to play it if you get it on stage 2-1. Some people do it on 2-2. I prefer only doing it on 2-1. just because go big or go home, right? Like with Piltovers, that kind of is like the nature of the trait. But as for the units that you want to play, 4 Gunners, any of them work, but preferably in the late game you do get Gangplank. Aphelios is the main carry. Last Whisper Runons, like any AD damage items will work on him, and then Sejuani is going to be your main tank. But make sure you just like open fort with the Piltover build. So I'll kind of show you how it is. So if you start the game with 3 Piltover with like Jace, Orianna, and Vi, just set your team up like this, have the T-Hex die right away, and then trap your Vi in the back so that you guarantee lose all the rounds. Unless someone like sells their whole board and just like has literally nothing there, you will most likely lose, and that's just going to be like how you're going to be playing that game. After that, you want to find a time to stabilize. Generally, it's going to be stage like 3-6 or 4-1, and then that's when you're on like your very last life. Roll down for the board you see here. Pray that you face someone that's not super duper strong, beat them, and then have a party because you are going to probably win that game afterwards. Next up, we have Quinn Reroll. So Quinn Reroll is pretty decent overall. It's kind of like a hipster build right now. Fiora is still very powerful. It's kind of just like a Demacia build, but you focus more on Quinn and Slayers instead. But Fiora is still going to be a monster. Fiora doesn't really need much to get her going, which is kind of nice. But Quinn, you definitely want 3-star. You could complement it with a 3-star Sona as well. Just like throw more attack speed on your Quinn. And yeah, throw other Slayers in and she's going to hopefully pop off. Mordekaiser can still do some stuff. Keep the Quinn and Mordekaiser near the Sona because again, you want the attack speed buff. But overall, pretty solid build. Jarvan's going to be the main tank. And do a 3-cost reroll pattern for this because you're focused mainly on Quinn. That's going to be it for the A tier. So the B tier, we have Karma Reroll. Still solid, still decent. That's going to be 3-cost reroll. We have the Silco, Aphelios, Bastion. They're just better builds for Silco right now. I think like the Bruiser Silco build works out a little bit better. Naafiri Reroll. Seen better days. Hopefully there will be better days in the future also. And then Bilgewater, more like bad water. I don't know. I have to think of something funnier than that. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, just don't play it anymore. They over-nerfed it. It happens, you know. They'll probably buff it back up in the next patch, but hopefully nothing too insane or nothing too underwhelming either. Just to summarize, we have, like, again, these top comps. Definitely surprised by Cho'Gath being up there. I don't think people really predicted that when the hotfix came out, but definitely a very powerful comp. After that, like, for your go-to consistent comps, it's going to be Challengers and Sorcerer and Azir. And then after that, everything else if you get the right spots for them. So if you want like a little bit more granularity in the comps, such as having like S+, S, S-, A+, A-, head on over to the Patreon or the OF. And right now on the OF, I have a promotion where it's like, I think the first month or week is free. I don't remember what I put there, but it's only available to like the first couple of people who go there. So just keep that in mind if you want to see what it's all about. But it's nothing like that insane. A lot of people ask me like, oh, what's behind like the paywall? It's like, it's nothing that crazy, but like if people want it, it's definitely there. And it's just like a little bit more info, but nothing like that's going to stop you from like climbing or whatever, you know. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. I'll be streaming a bunch in the next couple days and be posting, I think, every day in the next week. So definitely stay tuned for that, and I'll see you all next time.